Hey, shout out to my YouTube family. Thanks for coming to Khaliis Take. You know what to do. Like, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell also so you can get the newest and the bonus content first. But let's just go ahead and jump right in. When I say all Clippers Nation need to be optimistic or have optimism about this season, that's an understatement to me. Because when you look at this team, there's a lot of roller coasters, been a lot of ebbs and flows, ups and downs. And it's been due to injuries and COVID and everything that other teams are going through. But the Clippers have been a team the last couple seasons that a lot of people look at that have been a contender. As long as you have Kawhi Leonard, I think you're definitely a contender to win a championship. That guy has definitely shown that he's one of the top players in the league. And I think everybody who watches the NBA should have him in their top 5, if you ask me. Personally, he's my favorite player, but he should bare minimum be in most people's top 5. But either way, when you look at it, he's there with Paul George, but the only problem is both of them players have been out. One, and Kawhi Leonard hasn't played none this season. Paul George has played up until, I believe, around Christmas of last year this season, and he went out with an elbow injury, which is definitely seeming to be more serious than what we thought. And then when you look at the Clippers team right now, they're hovering around the ninth seed, ninth seed, which is ninth seed would be playing tournament, eighth seed would be playoffs. So they're actually not in a bad situation, but they're definitely in the danger zones, what I call it, because if you slip any or have 4, 5, 6 game losing streaks anywhere in there, you can find yourself in the 10th, 12th seed and out of the playoff picture or the playoff tournament, play-in tournament at all. So, it's a lot that can go on. It's a lot that can go wrong for the Clippers, but hopefully them being optimistic as a team and Ty Lue preaching that to the players, hopefully they believe everything can possibly turn out to the better and go right for them. But right now it just looks really, really dim, when it comes down to the Clippers, because you don't really know when your two stars are coming back. First off, as I said, Kawhi Leonard, hasn't played any this season. Paul George, was out since Christmas, I believe, of last year. And the elbow injury really didn't seem like it would be that bad based upon the reports that they had out there about him and everything like that. But the more and more you hear about it, just seems like it's a lot worse than what it seems, because it's starting to look like the situation from last year with Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs, where they were basically listing him as day-to-day, knowing that he was never coming back in the playoffs. And it almost seems the same type of situation with Paul George. It's almost like we're reliving the same movie. And when you look at that in its entirety, from a distance, it's like, man, you hope that this team can find a way to get everybody back on the court, because, like I said, their window of opportunity of winning a championship is getting slim, and it's getting very slim, because teams are getting better, teams are getting healthier, and teams are adding to their team. Like the Clippers, pretty much they've stayed put in the offseason. They went and got Eric Bledsoe, but I thought they lost one of their premier defenders in Patrick Beverley that they couldn't afford to lose. To me, they say defense wins championships, and I always felt like, to me, that's a very, very notable notion. That's very, very true, because when you play defense and neutralize other team, you can substitute that for your offense sometime and still win. So, I definitely believe that. So when you take away any defensive prowess on your team, any defensive player on your team, you're hurting your chances of winning a championship. And I've said that in many videos, and I'll continue to state that because that's what I believe. And when you look at what Patrick Beverley did last year against Devin Booker, we all know how that went, so I don't need to really talk about it, but it was definitely amazing to see him actually go at a player like that and basically shut him down and neutralize all his superpowers. And that's definitely something that you want to have, or the type of player you want to have on your roster that you can have at your disposal to go out there against the opposing team's star and go out there and neutralize him. And that's exactly what the Clippers had. And they let that go for Eric Bledsoe, which is, or should I say, who is an average player at best. And I think he's maybe a fifth, or a sixth man off the bench, at best. And I'm not sure about his consistency. I've never been sure about it. I never thought he was the most consistent player. I thought he was very inconsistent, which is one reason why he's never really found a certified home in the NBA, I believe. I think he played with the Clippers, might have played with the Clippers the first time the longest, but it just seems like he's been a journeyman throughout the league for a reason, because it's just no consistency with his game, and that's not what teams need if they're trying to win. So when you look at that in its entirety, it's definitely not a good thing. And then, like I said before, Kawhi has never stepped on the floor this season. He's been out. He's been hurt. And, he's trying to rehab as quickly as he can to come back to help the team. But when you look at where the team is right now, is it any need to come back if you don't know whether Paul George is coming back? I mean, it's almost like Kawhi Leonard has to be optimistic too, because if Paul George doesn't come back, that means if he does feel good enough to return, why risk it all to go out there with a bunch of role players and you don't even know if you're close to 100%? You see what I'm saying? If you're going to risk it all, everybody needs to be out there and everybody needs to be healthy. I mean, he doesn't want to go through a situation like he did in Toronto, even though that worked out to the good for him because they did win the championship, but it took everything out of him to do it. I mean, he was scoring like 35, 40 points a game just to put them over the hump for them to win every series. I mean, that guy was actually a machine that whole playoffs. And that's the reason why we call him the Terminator, because only he probably could have did something like that. And him maybe and a few other players in the NBA, of course, but it's definitely a Herculean God, basketball God type effort that he put out there. And I know Kawhi doesn't want to have to do that again, because that's the reason why he left Toronto, to have help so he wouldn't have to carry the load as much and put all that load and weight on his knees, because his knees is not the best. And he's always load managed for a reason, not just because Popovich taught him that, mainly because to make sure his health is intact when it comes time to play the biggest games of the year, which is in the postseason. And, right now, when you look at the Clippers the way they are, I don't know if it's worth risking it all, especially if Paul George doesn't come back, because that's supposed to be his running mate. So, I mean, definitely that 1-2 punch would be great if they're able to be on the floor at the same time. Even though I've seen Paul George struggle at times in the playoffs and stuff like that, but I still don't think Kawhi Leonard would rather go into the playoffs without Paul George. If for some reason Paul George has to have that surgery, I don't think Paul George would come back then, and it would be very questionable whether Kawhi would take the risk in coming back without his running mate. And to be honest about Paul George injury, I mean, first of all, anything in the elbow area right there is definitely rare for basketball players, because it's not something that happens too much, not unless maybe it's like some infection in there, or he's took more hits to it than what most players are taking, because what the UCL injury that he has is pretty much equivalent to baseball players. Baseball players have those injuries, which requires Tommy John surgery, I believe is what it's called. So, and it's basically almost like a torn rotator cuff, to a degree. So, if he has that and if he has to get surgery, well, it's definitely over with for PG this season. Definitely have to look for next season. But I will say this, if Kawhi did decide to come back, even though PG couldn't for some reason or whatever the case may be, I still would like to see Kawhi out there. I still think if he's healthy, he can get them at least, past the first round, going to a couple rounds in the playoffs possibly, because he's definitely good enough to do that if he's healthy. But I mean, I don't know if he would risk it all like that. I'm not sure. He's definitely a pre-calculated type guy, and he definitely thinks things ahead before he actually makes the move. So we would have to see exactly how that will pan out. But hopefully, you got to be optimistic, as I said, that both players come back and both players come back healthy with a vengeance. Because I definitely think, when Kawhi is there, like I said before, I definitely think you got a chance to win a championship with him and PG on the team. I definitely think that nobody in the West scares them. Nobody in the West is really better than them. And I definitely believe they feel that way. And the Clippers should feel that way, because honestly, as good as the Warriors are, they can be beat. You know what I'm saying? They can. I mean, the ball movement, everything is great what they're doing, but they definitely could be beat, because to me, Stephen Curry a lot of times doesn't come up in the biggest moments when you need him to. And some of his playoff games that I've seen, they were really good, but I've seen him struggle in really, really big games. I've seen him do it. Western Conference Finals against Houston Rockets, he came up short a couple of games. Clay saved the day and Draymond saved the day with defense and things like that. In the finals, he's never been a finals MVP. So, you got to look at things like that. Those little things add up, you know what I'm saying? And Kawhi Leonard is definitely, to me, a better all-around player than Stephen Curry is, and Klay Thompson, and definitely Draymond Green. So, I mean, you add Paul George with that, and the rest of this team, they could beat the Warriors. They definitely could beat the Suns, even though they're number one in the West, because they took them 6 games last year without Kawhi Leonard. Now, they are missing Patrick Beverley, but still, they still have good defense. And with Kawhi Leonard being there, if he's healthy, well, he'll definitely make up for what Patrick Beverley did, and plus more on the offensive end. So I definitely think they could beat the Suns. And the Lakers, well, they're basically basically a mess right now anyway. So unless they make a trade or do some alterations in the lineup, or I guess maybe fire the head coach, I don't see them really propelling too far in the playoffs as well. So only team I really say that they have to worry about, which I don't think they have to worry about in actuality, would be Memphis. But they definitely could beat Memphis with Kawhi Leonard too, even though Memphis is hot right now. So shout out to them and Ja Morant. But at the same time, you got to look at this from this standpoint. You got to just hope. If you're Clippers Nation, you got to hope that these guys come back, because like I said, they can't afford to let this season be a lost season, because like I said, it gets harder and harder each year you don't win it, especially if you try to build an operation and a system the way Kawhi Leonard came here and built Kawhi Town and all these things. And I definitely think, he can live up to that. I really believe he can, but it's only thing is health is the one reason, or one issue that's standing in his way. And that's the one issue that's standing in the Clippers' way. I mean, if you look at the whole time, these last couple years since they've been assembled, I mean, it was one player after another. It seemed like it's always a major piece out. For the last 1 or 2 seasons, one of their major pieces that was out was Serge Ibaka. He was a big piece that was out. They never really had a chance to play with him and get that chemistry. Now, like I said, Paul George was out the first season with shoulder injury, I believe, going into the bubble where they imploded. But now this season, or last season from the playoffs dating to now, Kawhi Leonard's out with a major injury. So it's like the injury bug is hitting this team so much, it's almost like they don't have an opportunity to win a championship.
But hopefully things turn around for them, and hopefully things, start looking up and things start going their way, so they can have an opportunity to win a championship, because they are good enough if they're healthy enough, and they are a contender, and they are a top team in the West if they're healthy. But, only time will tell with health and everybody being on the floor and everybody putting the effort in and making the move and, making the effort to go after it and win the championship if everybody's healthy. But hey, that's my take on the situation. You leave any comments in the comment section. Let me know what you think. As always, hey, Cali out.